Doctor, we are ready to start.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to those who are in Portugal and good afternoon to all the others. Welcome everybody at our session. It was snowing here in Estonia today in the morning, but I'm sure in Portugal you are having a lot better weather. So we are feeling bad that we can't join you there in Portugal, but one day we will come again. I consider it a great privilege to have been invited to the conference, and wholeheartedly I would like to thank the Portuguese presidency for their great work during these challenging times and for organizing the current conference. I would like to welcome you all to our first breakout session, which theme, of course, is very, very important. It will be about the shortages of medicines, but not only. I'm sure there is nobody in the audience who haven't experienced the difficulties of shortages of medicines. But today in our session, we try to concentrate to the solutions already. So I hope that after our session, the solutions will be on the table. So some introductory notes. I will be moderating the session in the beginning. At the end, my name is Kristin Raudsepp. I'm the Director General of the Estonian State Agency of Medicines. My special interest for years in the agency and in the EU regulatory network has been the issue of availability of medicines. And I'm also the co-chair of the HMA-EMA task force of availability of medicines together with Mr. Noel Vatillon from EMEA. About the technicalities, please mute your microphones if you are not talking. And you were all present and you have heard very inspiring lectures and ideas in the morning. And now you all have the possibility to go and have a say in a breakout session. There will be 4 breakout sessions, all chaired by very experienced colleagues from drug regulatory agencies, association from hospital pharmacists, and consumer organizations. So the session number 1 will talk about national experience on shortages management. And the rapporteur will be Hugh Malone, the Director General of the Federal Agency for Medicines and Health Products of Belgium. Session 2 will be about shortages management plans to avoid availability problems. And the rapporteur will be Ms. Josipa Cvek, the Senior Advisor at the Croatian Agency for Medicinal Products and Medical Devices. Session number 3 will be about the solutions of hospital pharmacists for availability problems. And the rapporteur there will be Ms. Aida Batista, experienced hospital pharmacist representing the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists. And session number 4 will be about consumers and patients' perspectives on medicine shortages and about the case of small volumes and limited use medicines. And the rapporteur will be Ms. Monique Goyen, Director General of the European Consumer Organization, representing 45 national consumer associations in 32 European countries. So lots of interesting discussions. Unfortunately, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So you have to choose, and I know that you have made the choice already when registering to the conference. So we will come back together at 11:50. And listen to the rapporteurs giving 5 minutes conclusions. And after that, dear participants, you will have the possibility to ask questions, and please write your questions then into the chat box. With this, I would like to close my introductory words. I wish you a very fruitful discussions today. And now, whatever will be the technical miracle, please feel free to join the parallel breakout sessions of your interests in a lively discussion. And now I'm giving the floor to our 4 session rapporteurs, and please be back at 11:50. Thank you.
To discuss the issue we want to discuss. That's the availability of medicines and how hospital pharmacies solve their problems. So, 1 minute. Hello, good morning, everyone. If you can, as we are few, you can turn on your camera if you want. It will be rather friendly if you can see our faces, and it will be nice to see them. If we have problems with the sound, we will turn off the cameras. Okay, that's good to see faces, names, and the faces, the names we know and the faces we don't know. It's good to see them. So, if you don't mind, I will start. Welcome to our parallel breakout session 3. It's about hospital pharmacy solutions for availability problems. So I will give a context, 2 or 3 minutes context of the problem, and then I will pass the floor to the participants to have a very, very participative discussion, and if we can find any solutions, the solutions that we are searching for so long time, it will be wonderful. So talking about hospital pharmacists and the role of availability problems. Hospital pharmacists operating in any country in the world have an obligation in their daily routine to provide inpatients or outpatients, if applicable, with the correct medications necessary in a timely manner to prevent, cure, or treat their diseases and get the best health outcomes. When there is a disruption factor, whatever its origin, the availability of medicines can decrease and even lead to drug shortages. Whenever this happens, hospital pharmacists must take measures to avoid the delay, the interruption, or even the substitution of the patient's treatment. Setting this scenario, hospital pharmacists must take some reactive actions to optimize health outcomes, and these actions can include informing the prescriber about the shortage and recommend an alternative medicine, investigate when supply will be restored, sourcing medicine from an alternative supplier, and even borrow from another hospital if we work in a network. Substitute when and where appropriate, assess potential health impact of shortages depending on the delay in treatment, and provide a substitute or resort to compounding. Hospital pharmacists must do even more and have a proactive attitude towards the medicine shortage with prudent procurement practices, having in place prevention, contingency and response plans, and skills to carry out risk assessment even before a shortage occurs. Availability of medicines, that is the theme of our parallel session, it is not influenced only by shortages. There are other factors. Some of them cannot be solved by hospital pharmacists. We know that the medicines policies differ from country to country within the EU. That is why I will list some barriers, but the list is not exhaustive. I left to you the work to complete this list. The barriers to access can include prices of medicine, high prices, in particular in innovative ones, and quite low prices for the generic medicines. And availability of approved medicines due to strategic choice of industry not to introduce a product to a specific market. It means in case this is not lucrative enough for them to sell it there. Procurement policies which concentrate too much on one supplier, with the only criteria being the lowest price and the result of having a winner that takes it all. Clinical trials that are only open to a specific group of people, excluding very often younger and or older patients. National or local rules for the use of new medicines or issues with the insurance companies for certain treatments, because the national state system are different from country to country. Affordability and sustainability of the national system, whatever the model of the country we are speaking of. I am sure that when I was listing some of the reasons for unavailability, each of you thought in another one that we can add. The aim of this session is to discuss freely all the aspects that can influence the availability of medicines and show how hospital pharmacists can be part of the solution for their patients. And now I leave to you the floor. Please raise your hand or put in the chat whatever you want. I see that in the chat there's already, oh no, it's not about the session, it's about other things. So who wants to be the first one to speak? So, is this a problem for the hospital pharmacists that are working here or not? Will we have some inputs from our colleagues or even from the regulator, if they have any ideas for hospital pharmacists to take measures to the availability of the medicines? Please. To speak, please turn on the micro and start speaking.
Shall I start? Can you hear me, Aida?
Yes, Monica, please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the introduction. And I'm very happy to be here in this session with you today. Perhaps I can start, and of course I'll give the floor to the other colleagues also participating in the session. Just to say that I believe that healthcare providers, including hospital pharmacists, are providing input to the work, for instance, of the EMA task force on availability of medicines. And most recently, we're developing a guidance, best practice guidance for stakeholders on the prevention of shortages. So here is to try to put in place a set of measures to prevent shortages from taking place or to mitigate their impact. And I believe that hospital pharmacists have been involved are providing the input, which is very welcome and very important. As mentioned in the previous session, it is important to have input from all stakeholders in the supply chain when we want to address shortages or availability issues. So that's why we, Emma, in our activities, we ensure that we receive the input from all stakeholders. And that has been the case with the EMA task force on availability of authorized medicines. So we've constantly received input from all stakeholders. If you remember, we had a workshop in 2018, which I believe it was very valuable, and it is so important really to have everyone around the table. So I think there was a rather successful event, and then we continue the work after that. We also have input from healthcare providers and patients and consumers through our working parties as well. So that is another vehicle for us to receive input from you. But of course, we want to go even beyond that. Again, perhaps also mention what we're doing in the context of the pharma strategy. And there I can mention my personal involvement, Emma's involvement in one of the work streams of the structured dialogue, the definition of critical medicines. And there again, we very much seek the input from all stakeholders, and hospital pharmacists are valuable contributors and have been contributing to the discussions, which is really, really helpful, because you have the know-how on what is happening at hospital level, and that is essential for all this work, the work of the task force as well. Now, very specifically, this work on defining this methodology or criteria for coming up with a list of critical medicines that we need to ensure supply at all times, so peacetime as well in crisis. I don't want to take more time, and I also want to give the floor to others to comment, but of course, any questions you have or any particular information for further details, I'm happy to contribute. Thank you.
Oh, yes, I have a question to you about the best practice guidance to mitigate the impact of shortages when it is available.
So we, unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic and the COVID BCP at a level of EMA, so the activities of the task force are somehow on hold. This has slightly progressed, not on hold, but we're progressing very slowly. So we need to finalize that guidance. This is one of the outputs that it's almost finalized. Of course, there's a need for further discussion, but then we can proceed to the publication. But we are really working slowly. We also need to review the mandate of the task force, the new 3-year mandate. That was, we had a 3 mandate finalized at the end of 2019. We were given a new 3-year mandate, and we have to now review the work program of the task force, also in light of the European Medicines Agency strategy to 2025 and the pharma strategy. So there is quite a considerable overlap. We have to ensure that the activities are actually support each other, and we're not left with any gaps. And also there is no duplication, but synergies. So this is what we have to do at the level of the task force. But unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic and the COVID BCP, we're really running at a very, very low speed in terms of the work of the task force.
Thank you, Monica, for your answer and clarification. Of course, the COVID pandemic affects everyone, not only the patients, but every work we can do properly and in full speed ahead to solve some of the problems that is really, really difficult to manage our daily work as hospital pharmacists, for instance, with the work we have to do on policy and to defend the patients from the shortage that we have to do. Since you spoke about the structured dialogue, I am also part of that group, not the group that you are, but on the vulnerabilities of the supply chain. It's quite difficult to join all the stakeholders to discuss one of the supply the really complexity of the supply chain that have vulnerabilities that lead to shortages, and that's quite difficult to reach a solution. But we are here to listen to everybody. What I say is, normally when we speak about shortages or when we speak about the problem that we have, normally we only look to our own problem. I don't have, for instance, the medicine for the patient. But when we have those dialogues, when we have those workshops, and we are all together speaking freely and with transparency, we can see that the others have also problems to solve, and that's the main goal. I think it would be the main goal to check what are the other problems, to try to solve them all together. But I don't want to take over the floor, so if anyone wants to speak, since we are few, please turn on the microphone and speak. It seems that we don't have a problem on availability of medicines in the hospitals.
I think we need to check. We need to check if colleagues can actually speak. It's
yes,
that nobody's taking the floor.
Yes, I think so. But we have the chat also, and I have no questions. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm checking now. It's so difficult because they have all the chats in the same place. Okay. Breakout room 3. Yes. Fernanda Mendes, what can hospital do to change the price paradigm in tenders? Do you want Fernanda to speak about the problem and to show what's the problem that you face on the tenders? No. Well, we know about the tenders. We know that we could use several criteria to launch a tender and procurement. And we know in some countries, like, for instance, in Portugal, we have a centralized body that makes all the tenders and the procurement steps to buy the medicines. And the only criteria is lowest price. Lowest price is really a way to meet a shortage, to go to a shortage and to lead to a shortage. Because if we have the lowest price and the winner take it all, it can happen that the winner cannot fulfill the needs of a market, and all the others that lose the tender and the acquisition will only remain with a very low production. And if you have a shortages on the one that wins, and we look for the others, we will not have any long provider for the medicine. One thing we must ask to our providers of tenders and to our institutions that do the acquisitions for the hospitals, or at least the tenders for the hospitals, is to have some technical criteria to avoid the lowest price. Because even if you take 2 or 3 providers, you can also have the problem of shortages, because they go to the same place to get the medicine. and we should know where the medicine comes, of the APIs of the medicine comes. Otherwise, we will face the same problem again. I don't know if I gave an proper answer. Monica, do you have anything? You're muted.
Sorry, I was just reading the chat. So, Fernanda, the person who asked the question, is not in the room, just on streaming. So that's why Fernanda could not ask the question. You are muted, Ida.
Sorry, I was checking the chat and I saw that no one no one asked anything else, only the price, and we can go and check again what we can do about it. What we can talk about the hospital pharmacist role on availability. I think I will be the only one speaking, Monica, and I will be the only one. I can't understand why, because it's a pity that we can't have a fruitful and a great discussion about this. We can go, for instance, on availability of the medicines after being approved, after having the authorization to commercialize the product, and that is that the several health systems of each country has to have a evaluation assessment to the need of the new product, and to see if the new product that comes to the market is has added value to the others. And we cannot keep going adding medicines to our portfolios, otherwise we will keep having the growing on expenses from 5 to 10% on the consumption of medicines in healthcare systems, and at the same time have the lowest prices for the generic medicines, that they are more prone to be in shortage than the others. So availability has these two kinds of measures. One measure is the high prices medicines that must be evaluated before going to the market, not only in safety, but also in added value. And the other hand, the lowest prices that get the production of the medicine. It will not be sufficient, that will not have enough profit for the producers to put on the market. So we have to balance those two sides of the price solutions and the availability. And for the high prices medicines, we have to really evaluate the added value that they will bring to our health system. And that sometimes creates on the consumers, on the patients, some kind of frictions, or some kind of undesirable feelings, because they don't understand why they can't have that medicine available. Anyone wants to speak about this?
Perhaps just to say either from our side that actually in the strategy, European Medicines Agency strategy to 25, we have proposed to have to address availability issues of generics from a different perspective to how to address unavailability of medicines and the patent. So it really much reflects what you were just saying. We need to put different measures in place because the root causes are different, and that is the approach that we will take. So we regulators, we will have this different approach and address those different types of products differently. So I think that goes in line with what you just mentioned. But what I wanted to say as well is that we have some questions. I'm happy to read them. We have some questions in the chat box.
Yes.
One from Susana Santos. How can the pharmacist role improve towards the involvement in decision making?
Well, we have to be there. We have to be near the centers of decisions to involve ourselves in the decision making, and we have to be prepared, trained, and have enough knowledge about everything that involves the decision to have a medicine in the market or not, meaning that we have to prepare ourselves with the proper knowledge to go and say this medicine has a high level added value to be in the market, and this is not. And you know that, for instance, in Portugal, in Infarmed, that's where I know better what happens in the health technology assessment. We have lots of pharmacists working there and giving the technical and the pharmaceutical input for the process of the assessment previous to hospitals can have or buy the innovative or the new drugs for the patients. And there are a lot of pharmacists working there, even on the commission of the evaluation, health evaluation technology, are pharmacists and pharmacoeconomics people working there. So we are involved. And also many of the elements that are in Infarmed are hospital pharmacies by education or still working as hospital pharmacists. So we are involved, and the only thing we must do is improve our knowledge about the assessment of medicines. I don't know if I answered the questions, and I don't know, Monica, if you have any
There is
questions.
one more, which goes along the lines of what you just mentioned, innovation. This is from Inês Silva. How can we start providing more access to value-based innovation in hospitals? Innovation is expensive, but if it provides another gains to the patient and to the health service, it should be discussed.
Yes. Is Inês on the room? No.
No, I think it's
no,
also
no. Oh, yeah.
streaming.
I agree with this question. We should give the more access to value-based innovation in hospitals. The problem is that we cannot have the huge prices of innovation to introduce all the innovation in the hospitals. You can think that is contrasensus, but it's not, because I know that the research and development is expensive. I know that some of the innovative drugs are especially directed to one pathology or one patient. But our national health system, and I think every national health system in Europe, not only in Portugal, cannot only measure or take only in account the value-based innovation that says that it will improve the health of 100 patients or 1,000 patients, and that then they will not go to the hospital as frequently as they go, and they will not have side effects as the oldest medicines will give. But we must also think that to buy those medicines, we must have money to buy them. We can think in another way of paying those medicines or buying those medicines by contract, as we do in Portugal. But even by contract, sometimes it seems that we will not be able to stuck in the budget for pathology. Think about hepatitis C. At the beginning, the number of patients to be treated was quite low, and we had a contract with the companies. And when we start treating the patients, we saw that that number were until the sky. So it was a huge number. Suddenly we had, because we didn't have a proper data about the patients in our country, we had to treat much more patients than we had in the first contract. Then we had to made an addenda to those contracts of buying. So we have to think in another way to have availability of innovation and to treat the special patients, and also have the money to treat the other patients. And we know that money is not infinite in healthcare setting.
Okay, we have another question related to innovation. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. It's from Fernanda Mendes. She said, after having an approval of use form from Infarmed, why innovative medicines must go through a hospital evaluation when the medicines have already been determined to have an added value?
Yeah, yes, that's an interesting question. And I must say that hospitals live with budgets and programs, contract programs made with between the Ministry of Health and the hospital. And whenever we introduce a new technology, we will not have adequate budget with that new technology. So we have to adjust the budget to have the new technology in the hospitals. Otherwise, if we don't have a direct how can I say, financial route for that new technology, we have to adjust our budget that, that is always under the ideal budget to provide the new technology. And that's why we must see and we must check if the patient that doctors propose for that treatment are the patient that really need the medicine, because there are criteria to include the the patients on that program of on that treatment, and we must check if it is really appropriate for that patient. And those are the two reasons for being evaluated for the drug and therapeutic committees of the hospitals.
Okay, we have some other questions on the topic of shortages. One from Marta Rodrigues, which says, can biosimilars also be a solution for product shortage? What can we do to increase biosimilar penetration in Portugal?
Well, I have several micros. Well, okay, thank you. Yes, I can tell you that biosimilars are and already are the solution in the hospitals. We should go further and try to convince doctors that we can switch from a brand to a biosimilar. The resistance from some doctors and some patients and some association of patients is that they claim that there are no studies about switching from one biosimilar to another. And sometimes it's quite difficult to convince that that's not a problem. And we know as pharmacists, and there is no problem on switching from one biosimilar to another. The only problem that the only thing that we should be focused is on the traceability of the medicine that is given to each patient. This is the only issue that we have to take in account, and we do it in all hospitals. And we know whenever there is adverse reaction or some event that we do not expect, which medicine that particular patient took, and what is the problem, and where can be the problem if we want to know it. And I think I answer the.
Yeah, one of the questions was for you to give an example of how pharmacists solve the situation of medicine shortages. I think you have elaborated a bit, but if you want to give further examples.
Oh, yes, about shortage in the hospitals. Normally, shortage doesn't reach the patients. Normally, we are able to solve the problem before, but it's quite difficult to at least to know whenever there is a shortage. Now we have the mandatory obligation, the mandatory procedure for the manufacturer authorization holders to inform our regulatory agency about the shortages. But sometimes shortages are unexpected, and we only know that there is a shortage when the order that we put on the market is not fulfilled. And then we have some actions to do. First of all, we have to confirm with the national authority if there is any kind of misinformation, if they know how long the shortage will be holding in the time, and if there is another supplier in the market. Those three are the basic things that we do. Besides phoning our colleagues from the nearest hospital saying, do you have, and can you borrow me some vials of this or that? But that's not a solution. Another case is if we have a shortage, a long-term shortage, and we are aware that we only have the product available in 3 or 4 months, or whenever they decide to put on the market again. and that leads us to a situation that we have to propose to the Drug and to the Therapeutic Committee and also to the doctors, and the doctors to the patients, substitute for that medicine that are not available anymore. So we have a lot of work behind this solving solutions and trying to solve in any kind of solution to the patient, even if it is a substitution. For instance, we had some situation that the patient said, "But I want my medicine," and we could try to import also, but sometimes the shortage is all worldwide and we cannot find the medicine. So the patient has to find a way in his or her head to say, well, I have to change my medicine. And the doctor must be proactive, talking to them about that. And the pharmacist, is being the hospital pharmacist or the community pharmacist, must have a transparent communication with the patient, saying that there is no one's fault that you don't have the here as a healthcare professional. There is no one's fault that you don't have your medicine. It's a problem from manufacturing from India or China or wherever the problem is, but we will find you the best medicine for you that keep your condition controlled until we have the medicine, or forever if the medicine just disappear from the market. And I think I have
Yeah, I think you have addressed that question. And still on that topic, one of the hottest topics lately has been antibiotics management. How can the pharmacist role be improved at the crossroads of raising AMR and shortages of old molecules? Which incentives can be most impact in your view? Can have the most impact in your view?
Another comment.
Well, we have. Sorry, can you turn off? Yeah, thank you. Whenever there is a shortage for low prices, we have to balance and to say, for instance, we have antibiotics that costs one vial 0.0006 or euros, and that's less than chiclet or chewing gum. And we must also know that only the vial could be more expensive than the content of the vial. And it's quite difficult to say to a manufacturer, continue to do this. Either we give incentives to do that, or we find alternative solutions. For instance, in each country, if we sorry.
Hi, sorry to interrupt you. Just to let you know that we have to wrap up in 2 minutes. I'm sorry, there are a few questions not answered, but yeah, we need to wrap up.
I will finish this in a few minutes. We can give incentives. We can use old facilities or facilities that are not fully used, like, for instance, the military facilities, or even facilities from private sector that could, with incentives, go and produce those old medicines. Or we have to manufacture and compounding them at the hospital. That's the final solution for us. So we have to finish, as the moderator said, we have to finish our session. I think we have lots of things going on about availability and shortages. I will try to make a resume after this, and thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
For coming back. I know you had very good discussions. I see a lively chat also going on, so I know that you are having now the solutions. Please put them on the table. And we are starting, Hugh, from you, please. You have 5 minutes to say.
So, with some technical issue during my presentation, so we didn't have such a long time to discuss, but yet I had the chance to present the law that we put forward in Belgium in 2019, that we in fact used as well during the COVID crisis, which was helpful in some places. We also showed that the platform we have put into place that connect the agency with the lay public, with the wholesaler and marketing holder authorization, as well as the pharmacist, was quite helpful to exchange the right information. Of course, all the information are not always available for everybody, as you might imagine, so we need to segregate and do our best to be, for the lay public, quite straightforward and understandable. And for others, we can go more into details about what could be done. We explained that we also have a tree to define to give a good definition of what is a critical medicine and a critical issue that we need to tackle. We come into the conclusion, and there was discussion, some question around it in the chat, that price is indeed a problem because it is a powerful driver for parallel trade. I give an explanation that very often the parallel trader in Belgium come to me and to the politicians saying that they are a part of the solution. I would say yes, but the but being that you might solve a problem somewhere by creating another problem somewhere else. So we need to be very careful on this side, not by blocking parallel trade, because I think it is useful to keep the price at a certain lower level, I would say. But on the other hand, we need to be careful that it's not an incentive to provoke a disruption in the market. And in specific case, we saw that, and our colleague from Slovakia explained that they did change the law in order to block this incentive for traders, but quite rapidly they find a way around, and now they are facing the same problem they had before the law. So that's a tricky problem. That's something we need to address all together in a coordinated way, not being seen as trying to interfere with the free movement of goods, of course, but on the other hand, trying to protect all European lay public and citizen and to help them to get access to important medicines. So that would be my conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you for this. We will listen all the conclusions, and then we can have a discussion and some more questions. So thank you, and we are going to session number 2. Josipa, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, the topic of the session 2 was shortages management plans to avoid availability problems, where we discussed the importance of initiatives focused on stability of pharmaceutical supply chain. As the reasons for shortages are complex, there is no quick solution available by implementing a single measure. So we agreed that some of them should be early communication on possible supply disruptions of all stakeholders within the supply chain, then management of shortages with patient in focus, like exchange in clinical practice to prioritize use of the product for specific patient group, then regulatory initiatives to the most vulnerable medicinal products to shortages such as old but still clinically imported medicines would also be useful to keep these products on the market. And focus should be moved from safety and efficacy to their quality, since quality issues are most often the cause of their shortages. And since forecasting of national medicines demand is gaining in importance as an idea that could be of help in timely prevention of shortages, we also discussed development of EU platform for monitoring the medicine stock levels. But this is very sensitive area, and it will be better to focus on manufacturers' responsibility to ensure adequate stock levels, for example, to investigate possibility to have industry to have buffer stocks as a part of the procurement procedure. And that will be the conclusion from our session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Aida, please, session number 3.
Thank you. My session was about the hospital pharmacy solutions for availability problems. We talked about the way hospital pharmacists deal with shortages, what kind of actions they have to take, and we think that hospital pharmacies have a direct stake in the efficient functioning of the medicine supply chain and the operation of medicines reimbursement system that enable patients on hospital to benefit for sustainable and equitable access to medicines they require. Nevertheless, there are some barriers to treatment assessment. And one of the barriers are the procurement practices and policies that link to pricing and reimbursement can tackle medicine shortages, and we have to break down these barriers. And also the national policy choices linked to procurement, to value assessment and price mechanisms should safeguard the access of patients. One of the questions that we had was why, if the EMA or the national agency approves a medicine, why another health assessment and technology has to be provided to allow, for instance, as in Portugal, to hospitals buy the medicines for patients. That was one of the questions. And one of the questions is the affordability and the sustainability of the system. And we have to be sure that innovation is used on those patients that really need and can benefit for that medicine. So we also talked about EMA actions, the practice guidance, good practice to solve shortages and mitigate impact. It is briefly, as long as COVID situation allow us to be published, and the hospital pharmacists are involved, and the input of hospital pharmacists is very important on this issue. Also, hospital pharmacists are involved on the structured dialogue for shortages for the EU in two groups, the critical medicines and also the vulnerabilities of the supply chain. So the hospital pharmacists are should be always part of the solution of accessibilities and shortages. This is one of the conclusions that you will see briefly in a position paper from the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists that will be launched after our General Assembly. Maybe in end of June, August, we'll have a position paper on availability of medicines from Hospital Pharmacy Association. Thank you.
Thank you for this explanation. And now word and floor to Monique, please, the consumers and patients perspective.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity to include into this event also the perspective of consumers and patients when it comes to impact of drug shortages. What is the type of impact? Well, we have discussed this also very shortly in the session. It is, of course, stress and anxiety. It can be that they become more unhealthy, sicker, and sometimes even that can lead to hospitalization. And also sometimes the effect of there can be side effects of the alternative treatment or even also higher costs, just to mention a few. We have also shortly mentioned the reasons for these shortages. And what we would like to highlight is the fact that sometimes it can be linked to the commercial strategy of a company, like just withdrawing a product, a drug from the market, creating an artificial shortage, then reintroducing it at a much higher price. This is not good for the consumer finance and not good for the public health finance neither. Quite some solutions have been identified and suggested. I will try to mention most of them. We have mentioned also parallel import as one of the solutions, but I would like personally to agree with the first rapporteur saying that might be just shifting the problem somewhere else, and that the solution in that context is really more coordination at European level, so that situations of local shortages can be outweighed or neutralized by a more European-wide coordination. There has been also mention of the fact that companies need to with rigor notify to regulators when there is a situation of drug shortages, and there should be public reporting on those shortages via a database that is accessible to all stakeholders. We also believe that authorities need to be very proactive when it comes to communicating about drug shortages, because sometimes patients, or most of the time, patients are not aware of the fact that there is a shortage that might affect a treatment that they need to undergo. However, it has been quite made clear also in the chat that there is a need not to over-communicate, in the sense that you should not create a situation of fear, of panic, and a run on those drugs that are still available at a temporary level. So it needs to be smart communication, so that consumers do not overreact when it comes to the shortage. So it's important to give also the right proportion of the figures that are in terms of shortages. Another proposal that was made is to set up high-level collaborative forum that are multi-stakeholders, meaning, of course, the regulators, of course, the different regulators that are involved in drug, putting drugs on the market and paying for them, but also, of course, the companies, but also patient and consumer representatives, so that they can be involved at an early stage in order to do their job in communicating towards the people, the public opinion about what's happening with some drugs. And also they can feed back to the forum and to the other stakeholders the situations that are being experienced by the people on the ground. There should be also stronger obligations on companies in terms of the obligation to present to the marketing authorization process also a drug shortage prevention and management plan. So this is something that we believe is a very important step that would need to be quite quickly. We also believe that once a company has a market authorization, there should be an obligation for it to market, not just to keep it somewhere in the drawers. Although we know that there are, of course, after the marketing authorization, very important decisions to be taken on the pricing and on the reimbursement that will also have, of course, an effect on the availability or the accessibility of medicine. As a conclusion, what I would like to stress is the good news is there are plenty of solutions that are possible to address either prevent or manage drug shortages, and that the upcoming the pharma strategy and the upcoming legislation that will be reviewed or will be reinforced are, and in particular also the regulation that is about the reinforcement of the mandate of the European Medicines Agency are a perfect momentum to really try to improve prevention and management of drug shortages in Europe, and we should take that opportunity to make that that problem, to keep that problem under control. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these words. These sound like music to my ears, that there are plenty of solutions. So I'm sure that Portuguese presidency have written them all down and can present them and make them to life, like council conclusions and whatever actions could you take. Thank you all for these conclusions. Now we have time to answer again some questions. So anybody from the audience, if you would like to ask something, please write in the chat box. But to open this discussion, I would like to say that I'm somehow the feeling that agencies, pharmacists, even patients know so many things, what they can do and what they have done already to prevent, to mitigate the shortages. Again and again we hear that the regulators should be more flexible, but we can't forget that how flexible can the regulators be not to harm the evaluation of quality, efficacy and safety. Actually, the power of having the medicinal products on the market in the first place is in the hands of the industry. So if there is anybody in the audience from industry, even if you can't ask it orally, you can write something into the chat box. I would be very much interested in the opinion of the industry about these proposals, that stronger obligations for the industry and risk management plans, inspections. So if anybody from the industry can step in, it would be also nice. But as I don't see at the moment I can see a comment about growing regulatory requirements and price strict policies. It might be true, but as a regulator, I can tell that we are working hard to harmonize the regulatory requirements between the countries. And I like very much the idea of discussion further. Do we have the paper information leaflet in the package, or we can, in taking into account all the technical possibilities we are having, maybe we can make the life easier and use a blank medicinal product to guarantee that we could quickly move one medicine to another country, and we will find the information in national language in some other way other than the national language paper in the box. I have the question to Hugh and
Yes.
as the people from the agency. What do you think about the inspection of the shortages? Actually, it is something we don't do very often, and I think it is not something what is in the EU legislation either. So, but those who work every day with shortages, they say that they see hundreds of colors of the reason of shortage, industry saying commercial reason or whatever. So what do you think about the inspection of shortages?
That's a tough question. It depends where you want to go with your inspection. You can go in a factory or rather go for wholesalers or distributors. I think the supply chain is quite large. And if we only go to the industry, even with an inspection, I would say, for instance, at the Belgian headquarters of a company, I'm not sure I will get information what people want to see, in fact. I've worked for the industry when I was younger, and pricing discussion, they are quite difficult in the industry. We were a very few number of, we were like a handful number of persons that were really aware of what were the price throughout the countries. So I think it's not pricing. It's a very tough parameters to control, because, as you probably know as well, transfer pricing can be applied. And so if you go to a factory and you ask, what is the cost of your product? It's impossible to really understand what is the relationship between the true value of the product you have in front of you and the price that is used throughout the supply chain. So I can understand the reflection and the thought that you need to go for inspection and try to understand, but that's not an inspector that can help understand the construction of a price. I don't know if I'm clear here, Christine.
Thank you. It is exactly what I was thinking, that it is not an easy task. Josipa, would you like to add something about the idea of inspecting the shortages?
I just want to add that as a national spokesperson, I just want to inform you that within our spoke network, there is an extensive discussion on this topic, and to set a better coordination between inspectors and spoke network, because it's easy when you have a quality defect in a factory at your home. But what if manufacturer is in another member state, or how to coordinate and exchange information, because manufacturing issues are the most often the cause of shortages. For example, the old equipment, and so I just want to inform you that this topic is under discussion extensively within the SPOC.
Yeah, so I wish you all the strength, because really I think that it is something we should understand together with the industry. What is the actual reason? Maybe the study from the European Commission will help us understanding the root causes, but it doesn't matter how flexible are patients, how flexible are regulators, the medicines are coming from industry. So thank you. I can see in the chat box, Portuguese colleagues have said they have done inspections. Yeah, should be applied in the European legislation, which I think is true, because as you know, at the moment, all the regulators and all the stakeholders are working hard with shortages, but it is not in the European legislation in such a way at all. So I really hope that it will be the future, and I know the legislation is open at the moment, so I hope something will come there. So not a concrete question, but maybe I would like to ask from Aida, from you, what do you think, who has the most of the power in this chain of stakeholders to solve the situation what we are facing every day? Who has the most of the power to do something?
Well, if you want a simple question, well, we all have to solve our problems, but of course, the strongest on the supply chain is the manufacturers and the industry, but we have to also help them with some or give them some tools and some information from our side to them to solve some of the issues that sometimes they are not fully understood from our side as healthcare professionals. Because what I want is to have a medicine for my patient. I don't care how I get it, but I want the medicine, the right medicine from the patient. If a provider says to me, I don't have that medicine, I say, it's your fault because you don't produce enough medicines for me to have and sometimes it's not the truth. So we have to keep going on this structured dialogue full of transparency and with multi-stakeholders and make everyone understand that we are producing something that is not valuable. It's health. Health that can't have a value. Health is the basic value that you need for all the citizens of the world, not only from Europe, but all of the citizens. And we have to together to build some kind of a chain that every small piece goes smoothly to the other, and it is very transparent in the supply chain to get the best treatment in an affordable way, because we don't have money at this moment. Europe and all the countries, even not only a poor country like Portugal, but all the countries have problems with money, with currency, and we should the availability of medicines should be affordable. Even if we hospital pharmacists start to manipulate, to compound medicines to solve the shortages.
Thank you, Aida. Monique, yes, I'm giving the floor to you, please.
Thank you. I would like to react to something because there has been a lot of talk about the price of medicines. And from the consumer perspective, you need to be aware that the pricing of medicines is a black box. How much is being invested in R&D? How much is just promotional and marketing expenses? And what we see here also is that sometimes people, like you and me, we end up paying twice. First as taxpayers, because there is a lot of public funding going into research and development, and certainly now, I mean, and for good reasons. But what is the return if I, as taxpayer, contribute to the development of a drug, and for example, of a new drug, and we all want to help developing new drugs for important diseases or vaccines. But then I have also to pay, and then there is also high prices in some instances or non-reimbursement of some drugs. So I would really say that the consumer part or the patient part of drug shortages has to be handled in parallel and in combination with the availability part, and that the pricing, I mean, helping to be better, more transparent on how pricing structures are being set would also sometimes help people understand how the market functions. But what we would really like to prevent, and where we would really like to see more transparency, is this, first of all, transparency. How is it funded? And if there is public funding, how is this being echoed in the pricing and reimbursement discipline? This is for us something, a fair market is where you don't pay twice for the same product. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Of course, this is absolutely clear that the transparency about the prices and transparency in the whole supply chain, it is very important. Yeah, so I see that we are already running into the lunch, and probably the wine is warm and the food is cold already, but maybe just to close up from our wonderful panelists, is there anything you could say how to make the better cooperation we are doing at the moment? Because we saw last year when the pandemic started, all the nice words about cooperation between the member states, they somehow crashed. And now we are building it up again piece by piece. So do you want to say something how we could do better cooperation to solve the issue of shortages between all of us, stakeholders, regulators? Josipa, would you like to just final words?
I again can speak from the perspective of spokesperson, because through Spoke Network we exchange information on possible shortages of critical medicines where there are no alternatives, and then we share information on available solutions, available alternatives between member states. And I have to admit that I'm happy with this cooperation. It's very successful. So I have a good experience.
Thank you. It sounds well. The Spock system, which is quite new, is working well, and you are happy. So thank you for this information. Hugh, would you like to say how to make better cooperation working to solve the shortages?
Okay, sorry, because I was muted by by the organization. Could you please repeat your question, Christine?
So just the word cooperation wouldn't be just a nice word. Everybody says it, that we need better cooperation. But can you say something we could do already tomorrow to just find again the point of the cooperation, what could help us to avoid and mitigate the shortages?
I think cooperation, it starts with transparent communication at every single level, including your own stakeholder in your country and your colleague in the various competent authority, as well as the EMA and the European Commission. To me, it's a very important point. To give you an example, very straightforward, we got a call from a wholesaler complying because a company refused to deliver medicine, and they claimed it was for the public services. So of course we went to this marketing authorization holder, and we learned that within 2 months, this wholesaler has ordered more than twice what was forecasted for the Belgian market. And we were, of course, in front of a big shortage. And the shortage was, of course, in other countries in Europe, probably including Estonia, I would say. So you see here, some people are hiding information in the supply chain. And this shouldn't be allowed, because then you take the wrong action against the wrong people. So to me, what we need really to leverage today is to have a transparent communication from all stakeholders and also between the different agencies.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Aida, would you like to say something for better cooperation?
Well, you know, I'm dealing with this issue of shortages for more than 10 years. So I keep going, and I will not give up until until I'm retired or something happens good. So I think we must listen to each other and listen carefully, and not with prejudices and not with some kind of untrust. We must trust our stakeholders, and if they trust us and we trust them, we'll find a solution for sure. Of course, with transparency, as said before.
Thank you. And Monique, your last words.
I'm aware that I'm the last person who withholds you from your glass of wine, so let me be very quick. I would like to say, I think that national solutions are not 21st century proof. We are living in a global world. We are living in the European Union, and we will, from our perspective, cooperation, exchange of information, coordination, and solidarity are the way forward. And when it comes to drug shortages, one very, a system that can be built up very quickly, not maybe tomorrow, but maybe within the year, is to have a common database that is shared by member states authorities on drug shortages, so that there is the possibility really to flag very quickly where are the hot spots, and that can then also help managing together the sectors where there is the more, let's say, structural problem. Thank you. And bon appétit, as we say in my country.
Thank you very much. I can see also some comments in the chat box that the high-level forum will be key, and comments from industry. Beata saying, explaining again what is the point of the industry in that question. And that we should work together, it is for sure. And as our panelists said, the transparent communication from all stakeholders, not only regulators, is extremely important. But with that, I would like to thank you for a very interesting session. Thank you all the panelists and session chairs, and I would like to thank all the participants. I wish you all the best and hope that the ideas from today will come into the life and change the scene of our everyday life. So I will be working hard in the area of shortages, so probably we will meet again before we can solve it finally. So goodbye and have a nice lunch, and I think the conference will go on in an hour, so you can see it in the agenda, so please take care. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.